The journey of the Houston Heights to historic district status is typical. It began as a huge master-planned community in the early 1890s, but it had begun to decline by the 1950s.
The older residents of Houston Heights started dying by then. A lot of the property became rental. People left the neighborhood to move to the suburbs. So it went into decline. It was typical of urban neighborhoods.
A lot of rundown houses. There were still a lot of multifamily, people living at multifamily in one house.
And the banks in the area had redlined all of the neighborhood. So you couldn't get a loan to restore a house here. And a lot of the big old houses were going down for apartments.
I don't want to say it was a slum area, but it was on its way to being a negative part of town. You really would not want to live here.
One big step on the road back was the formation of the Heights Association.
In order to help develop this neighborhood in a town that has no zoning and no preservation protections, there's no way to kind of control how a neighborhood grows. So it had to be the Heights Association, which got together and they got a squeaky wheel and they went down to City Hall and said, we need this, we need that, please help us. And people began to see the value of maintaining the historic houses and maintaining the neighborhood.
When they saw the value of what was happening with the housing, I think they pretty much came around to the idea that this was a good thing and it was a revival for the Heights because it would bring people back into it.
They were merchants and homeowners who were very concerned about what was going on in the neighborhood.
Around this time, a handful of intrepid homeowners rediscovered Houston Heights.
The Heights is kind of the standard preservation story, where a neighborhood goes so far down that it's so cheap that you really can't ignore it anymore.
So they were urban pioneers, and there were several of those that began to move within the neighborhood, and they loved the old homes. The Heights, as I said, still had some character.
Well, they were sort of lone wolves in terms of revitalization and taking on a large old house to restore, and all the details and all the carpentry work and all the problems that came with it.
To some, the appeal of the Heights and the other old neighborhoods was plain.
When I first moved to Houston and first laid eyes on Houston Heights, I knew that's where I ultimately wanted to live.
And I rode a bus that went through Heights Boulevard in downtown. And I said, one day I'm going to live here.
There were several of us who realized the value of the Heights and saw the historic nature and saw the trees and the front yards and the porches and saw its value.
Bart Truxillo was one of the pioneers, taking on one of the last remaining George Barber houses in the Heights.
I fell in love with this house, and I'm an architect from the University of Houston, and so I looked at its renovation and I really was excited about the challenge of bringing this house back.
He strived to restore the house to its original form.
I was very lucky because the house had not been remodeled or remodeled. Actually, the people that I purchased it from had done a little bit of remodeling in the kitchen area and in the back bedroom, and they were sure that I bought the property because they had done such a good job of that, and really I bought it because they had not touched the rest of the house. And so I had this original house with its original woodwork, the fretwork, the light fixtures. It had never been touched or remodeled, so that was the good part. The bad part was that it was sunk down, so I had a big leveling job to do, and from that leveling job created a basement area, so that increased the square footage of the house. And of course it had to be rewired, and the air conditioning had to be carefully put inside the walls and hidden so that it wouldn't interfere with the architecture. So that was kind of tricky, and I certainly learned an awful lot about historic preservation one-on-one here redoing this house.
Joe Ellen Snow took on a smaller home, but still faced challenges.
I saw the house at 711 Columbia Street and I said, I want that house, and we were able to agree on a price. Unfortunately, it took me at least 6 months to close the deal because I couldn't find a mortgage company that would lend money on a house in that poor condition. The roof over the porch was caving in, the floor of the porch was caving in, it hadn't been painted in years. It was in pretty bad shape, so I ended up actually having to put money into the house to repair it in order to get a loan to buy it.
The proper place to start a restoration is with research.
I decided I would like for it to be on the National Register of Historic Places, and I had worked with an architect who did a lot of historic preservation in the renovation of the house, and she offered to assist me with the research.
Deborah Sloan is a professional researcher who has delved into many old buildings.
I look at deeds, subdivision maps, plat maps, Bracy's Black Book maps that give you a footprint of the structure, telling you what the structure is made of, and perhaps when it was built, and what the value is of the house is at the time. And these go back as far as sometimes 1920s. And then if I'm lucky, there might be a nice black and white 3x3 Polaroid of the house in pristine condition, which is a lucky thing to find.
Houston is blessed with some excellent research facilities.
One of my 3 favorite places to research is the Texas Room, because you're going to have city directories that give you information about the structure, the Bracy's Black Book maps, sometimes newspaper articles. If the person was influential, you're going to find information about him in the newspapers. The second place I love to research is the county archives. The building land and assessments are there, and they've got very detailed records, as I said earlier, what the house is made of, how much it's worth at the time, the different owners of the house. And Clayton Library, one of my other favorite places to research. They've got, that's where I do my genealogy research. They've got books that give you information on the person. Not anything on the building per se, but basically when I'm going to Clayton, I'm looking for information on the resident who lived in the house.
Getting a property registered as a city landmark also requires a bit of research.
Well, every landmark is different, but we like to know when it was built, and if possible, who may have designed it or who built it, who the early residents were, what they did, what the property's been used for, what makes it significant. Is it significant for a historical reason? Did something happen there that is memorable? Did someone live there that is of significance to the community? Or is it significant because it's unusual architecture? Or does it have some kind of cultural significance, such as the scientific barbershop? It could be any one of these things or a combination of these things, but we ask for some research that can support the significance, but staff is available and willing to help, and we'll supplement the research as much as we can, time permitting. We have a research guide also that's available to anyone who's interested in researching their home or neighborhood.